One day I took about 30 people to Paul Cuisine, Cologne-Mondor, and they brought in the dining room 4 of those gigantic fish cooked in puff pastry. So basically it is sea bass that is filleted. In between they put a crayfish and fish mousse. And the whole thing is surrounded with puff pastry made of the shape of the fish.
Bonjour, this is Fabulously Delicious, the podcast that's all about delicious French food and the people that love it, cook it, produce it, talk, write and photograph it. Today it's part 2 of our interview with the wonderful Gabriel Gaté. If you haven't listened to episode 1, please do check it out. We learn about Gabriel's career and life in France and Australia. Gabriel trained in Michelin-starred restaurants and calls some of the best chefs in the world his friends. In this second part of my interview with Gabriel, we learn about the show that put him in the homes of many Australians whilst we went on a culinary voyage following the Tour de France every year with him. But we also dive into the subject of seafood and its importance in the culinary traditions of French food. You won't want to miss this one, part 2 of Fabulously Delicious with Gabriel Gaté. A lot of people will know you from your gourmet segment following the Tour de France,
Yes.
Which you did for 15 years. What are some of your fondest memories from doing that?
Well, to start with, I created the show. I presented it to SBS, and at the time, because I said, it's good to Tour de France is such an amazing thing about France. It's a cultural show. The images from the helicopter is just amazing. The regions, the mountains, and I suggested that perhaps I could get involved with doing a little segment talking about the culture, the regions, the food. And at the time, SBS said, "Well, listen, we produce sport. We don't produce cooking." And then we discussed further, and a couple of years later, I was asked, Les Marais said, "Listen, we think the idea is good, but you'll have to produce it because we do sport." So with all the experience I had in television, in really What's Cooking, I was really producing a food segment for a daily show with other people. But and with working with cameramans and others, I started to understand what it took to put a television show. And then as that segment started, it was recorded in Australia and became popular. And then suddenly we found ourselves spending 2 months in France, going from region to region, featuring the best of every region where the Tour de France was going that year. And that means visiting the most beautiful markets, meeting some of the great pâtissiers, the great chef, meeting someone making the best local goat cheese, visiting the market where that person was selling the goat cheese, and so on and so on. So it was for the last 10 years of me doing presenting and producing that show. It was really the best job of my life because it was everything together. Like my skill as a chef, my skill as a communicator about food, my skill on television that I had learned for many years, and it was really lovely. And then 2 years ago, I decided that it was good. I had enough. I've worked hard in my life, so I let it go. And on television, there's a rule that I've learned after more than 40 years of television. It is always nicer to live on your terms rather than when they tell you, "Sorry, mate, it's finished," with no warning. So it was wonderful. I have a great relationship with SBS, and people are remember Taste Le Tour as something fun, and where they took them away in the middle of a cold winter in Australia.
With that show, I mean, you pretty much highlighted so much of French food and French culture as you traveled around the race. What dish or person in particular did you enjoy showing?
Well, there's been many. Every year there was magic moments. Really, those magic moments where you go in a farm at 2,000 meters high in the Alps, La Chèvrerie, and you have got two guys. They look like hippies. They have been in their country all their life. They milk their goats by hand, and they make their cheese, in a small room, and then they turn their cheese and they brush them and they go to the market and everyone knows them, and you taste the thing and you say, "Gosh, I've never tasted a cheese like that in my whole life." So that as a chef, this is really a magic moment, because they open their door and you sit with them for breakfast. They milk the cow, they mix, do their preparation, they go for breakfast. So it's, the red wine at breakfast and whatever they they have, because it's their day is halfway already. They have been up for 3 or 4 hours. Um, but other magic moment was meeting, for the second time in my life, the great chef called Michel Guérard, the chef that really was amazing in with nouvelle cuisine, with the revolution of modern cuisine. When we went there 3 years ago, 85-year-old, still in the kitchen, not chopping the onion, but certainly running his brigade in the most amazing city in Eugénie-les-Bains, with a beautiful garden, with a garden, like with century-old trees, but also a vegetable garden, herb garden, um, in a most delightful hotel that you can imagine, a spa, that he has been running. He's 85. He has been a chef for 60 something years. He has got a 3-star restaurant. Uh, he has understood what it is about, and he explained to me. He said, "We it's like theater. It's a show. People come to be entertained. They don't come to, you know, but you have got to entertain them with the most beautiful crockery, cutlery, the decor, the table, the entrance, the music, the greeting them, giving them the chance to visit the kitchen. Like, it is not just being a smartass in the kitchen, imposing what you think is best. It's really giving the clients, like, a dream day, something that they will remember for the rest of their life. So for me, that was a highlight, because I know that now he's 88. It was 3 years ago. He's not going to be there for many years, and I've been lucky to meet a true master.
I was reminded from your Instagram recently, there was also the special show you did, the Tour de Frankston. And I bring this up because it really does highlight your humour. How have you gone with, and especially with Australians, with your humour?
Well, first, like, you work hard in your life, and the light moments are, highlights, between chefs and between family. I've always enjoyed playing jokes. I've always enjoyed having a giggle, and when we cook, of course, it's like we are with the moment. It's concentration. It depends what you are doing, what level, but like humor. I work with Bert Newton on television. Okay, someone that has worked all his life on television. I work with him for 15 years every week. Um, and he used to say, our business is to entertain people. When you are a chef on television, if you are too serious, it used to be okay, but now it's not enough. It's not enough. Um, so, and I really enjoy having a good laugh. I think that we can take, as we say in Australia, take the piss, out of self. Nothing is too serious. Nothing is permanent. Um, and the Tour de Frankston, that was for the ABC. It was a send-up of the Tour de France, and it's really, there was a really good director. We had the ball doing it, and they put it together, and basically we just laugh about the way people live in the other places, the specialty of their foods. And in Frankston on that day, the specialty was the dim sum, and nobody knows what's inside. It's a secret.
Interesting, because you've also been on the Wiggles.
They used my voice for one of their voiceover for one of their shows many years ago. It's really interesting when to use all those things, because um, voiceovers is actually quite an important skill when you do recipes on television, because when you edit recipes, you really need to use a fair bit of your voiceovers to describe what you are doing. So, any ways of training, I took classes in acting, I took classes in miming, just for fun, just to get a little bit more skillful. I did some juggling, just so you become a bit more loose, so you become a better performer, and it pays off.
So you're fully Australian now. Does that mean that you eat Vegemite?
I must say that Vegemite, I accept that people would like it because over the years I've spread it for my kids, and you lick your finger, you always get a little. And at the beginning, I thought, gosh, what is this? Now I accepted that it would please some people, but it is still not my thing. Like I really would never, um, choose to have a Vegemite toast. But I understand that people like it because it's part of the first food that people might have had, and that first food is really important to people.
Don't worry. I am one of the few Australians that doesn't like Vegemite. My mother used to
Okay.
threaten to put it on my tongue when I was bad. Gabriel, something special happened on Bastille Day in 2000. What was that?
Yes, I was honored with a French distinction. It's not knighthood, but we call it chevalier. It's a recognition to my contribution to French gastronomy through the Department of Agriculture. So it is a distinction. It's called l'Ordre du Mérite Agricole. It's given to people that have contributed to, usually the chefs, to gardeners, to winemakers that have contributed to things to do with things that are grown. And that was a great honor because it's a really important distinction in France. It was really lovely to get that as a recognition for what I had done. Lots of people do a lot, so it was an honor.
The family in France must have been very proud of you.
Very proud, yeah, especially my father, my parents, because they never quite realized what I was doing in Australia. Because they're a long way away. And they don't see the television. And nowadays you can exchange, but at that time it was a lot more difficult.
So, getting back to your childhood and food and family life, how important was seafood at that time?
Well, fish and seafood was really important because first remember France is mostly a Christian country. So when I was a young on Friday you ate fish, and on Sunday lunch fish was a very big thing in the French family, and in my family we went fishing in the river, and so the river fish was often served at lunch on Monday or Sunday night dinner. Um, and so we cooked a lot of fish. We love cooking fish, and we cooked fish very differently from Australians. We really, more often than not, cooked the fish in a liquid or cook the fish on top of a bed of onion, covered or in the oven or on some tomatoes or some herbs. So basically, what the majority of the fish that we would eat would be served white. Well, in Australia, that's what one of the big thing I noticed is that when I first cooked my dinner parties, it was very difficult to tell people I am going to poach that John Dory fillet in a court bouillon or in a stock, because people really like their fish to be brown, like their meat. So it had to be deep fried in something, or it had to be coated with breadcrumbs or pan fried, at least be brown, because the tradition was of fish was the fish and chip. So that's what the way people understood fish, not the Friday treat or not that kind of thing. So, but in France, that poaching of fish is wonderful because nowadays actually people use those technique, the sous vide and all of that. Really, it's a form of cooking things slowly in in water or in a stock. So with fish, either you made a court bouillon, and at home every home families had what we call a saumonière, which was a really big long kettle. And if you caught a big fish, you cook the whole fish in that. First, you made a court bouillon, so you put water, you put some herbs, some parsley, you put a little bit of thyme, you put some cracked pepper, you put a bay leaf. Sometimes you put some orange zest, or a little bit of white wine. You cook that for a little while for those herbs to infuse, and then you drop your fish into that, and then you just brought it to a simmer, hardly simmering, so it would poach, cook slowly. And that what it did is that it kept the fish moist, kept it so so delicate. And then with a bit of experience, you knew when the fish was cooked, and that was really, whether it was a fish fillet or whether it was a whole fish, that was one of the most delicate way to cook fish. And of course, there's all those techniques of putting a little bit of white wine in the bottom of a dish, a little bit of shallots, some sliced mushrooms, put your fish fillet, cover and cook in the oven or cook in the pan until it's just cooked. And then after that, you lift your fish when it's hardly cooked, almost cooked, and you make a sauce out of that, that juice. Like you put a bit of cream or a bit of butter or a bit of vegetable puree, and that gives you an amazing sauce to serve with that. And good example is the coquille Saint-Jacques that are poached. I know you love them. Such an amazing, the scallops. That's what we call coquille Saint-Jacques. Is the scallops. They're amazing in France. They are big, they are fat, they are delicious, they are flavorsome. People buy them in the shell, or nowadays you go to your fishmonger and it's still alive. And that's a big difference, of course. In France, there's that freshness that the best fishmonger, they don't sell many frozen food. You have got the crabs, you have got the araignée, the spider crabs, you have got the prawns still moving, you have got the yabbies, you have got all of that is still very fresh. The oysters open to the last moment.
So in France, the poissonnier is at the market is just as important as a butcher or a fromagerie, isn't
Oh
it?
yes, yeah, and they do really well. And you see, they come with a lot of fish and they come with a lot of ice, and they cut in front of you. You choose your fish, they fillet it, they do it the way you want. They do lots of preparation for you. They and really, and people, the families, they have well, traditionally have a fairly good knowledge. They know what they want. They're not asking the poissonnier, oh, is that a good fish? They know, I want this one, that size. Um, their favorite fish, and the seasonal fish. And the fish from the Atlantic is extraordinary because the Atlantic, especially the North Atlantic, the Channel, same fish that the English people get, like the turbo, the sole, it's cold water fish. Cold water fish is more delicate than warm water fish. So they are spoiled with high quality fish. Yeah.
When you came to Australia, you mentioned before how Australians like everything brown and so fried, etc. I mean,
Yeah.
when I grew up, like my mum's cooking of fish was either we went and got fish and chips or we had fish fingers.
Yes.
You go to Australia in the 70s, the late 70s. What was that like in regards to seafood? Like you arrive and you don't have a fishmonger at every market in
No.
Australia.
Well, luckily, being a chef, that you investigate. So there were some good fish being caught. The variety was minimal. Like it was really the flathead, the whiting, the Flanders. At that time, there was very little scallops. There were some prawns, especially in South Australia. The king prawns were good. The whiting was excellent. So the variety was not great. People still relied too much, in my view, on things that were frozen. It was a bit of a shock. But I cooked those poached fish without insisting too much. I just said I'm going to cook something really lovely. I had a dish that was really very popular in my dinner parties. That was my star dish, where I used to fold a fillet of whiting, and inside I would make a prawn mousse, and I would cook. I would have a dish, a pan, a little bit of shallots, a bit of white wine, or a little bit of stock. Put the fish over that, steam it, and then make a sauce with that, or serve it with a beurre blanc sauce. So I would cover the fish, so the sauce was on the fish, and I would garnish it with a peeled prawn on top, so it would look good. And like so people would try, and once they had tried this is so good. I would never order something like that. because it was not brown. So people were ready if you didn't discuss things too much. With taste, it's sometimes best for people not to know, and they taste and they say, "Oh, that was delicious. What was it?" Rather than because people with taste, people protect themselves. So I remember originally, when I arrived, there was not many asparagus, and I cooked asparagus all my life. People practically preferred the tin asparagus that people served with sandwiches, those white. And if you serve the fresh asparagus, people say, "Oh, no, I don't think so." Or you would say, "Have you tasted it the way I do it?" And no, no, but I know that I don't like it. So people protect themselves. That's what happens. What you don't know is scary. So that's what happens. So it's education. You know what? I'm not criticizing Australians or anybody because things have changed so much. Now you can serve raw fish. Like that. I could not serve pink. I used in my first classes. I used to cook, racks of lamb and legs of lamb that were, cooked and rested, and it was pink, it was tender, it was delicious. Oh, you could not do that with everybody. You really had to, for some people, to put it, to give them another few minutes or really cover it with a sauce where they would not see any pink because. But now, of course, it's a must. People have changed.
How has things changed now from when you first arrived? What is it like now for seafood in Australia? Apart from being very expensive sometimes.
Yeah, it is too expensive, definitely. Um, it is interesting. Your question is interesting because in Victoria, where I live, there is a region called Gippsland, and it's the largest region of Victoria, sub-region. Uh, and it is also the largest coastal region of Victoria. And if you ask the local people in Gippsland, what's the specialty of your region? Everybody is going to say, "Oh, we have got some nice beef, we have got some nice lamb, we have got some great cheese, we have got some great wines, we have got some asparagus, we have got this, we have got that," and then suddenly seafood. So if you want, it's very different from France, where France the seafood is, the fresh oysters, the seafood platter. We didn't even talk about the seafood platter that comes. That's just amazing display of fresh seafood with crabs and oysters and langoustine and things like that. Um, so it is not in the mind of the people seafood as one of the great food of Australia, and yet it is one. We have got dedicated fishermen. We have got an amazing crustacean. We have got great uh, crayfish, langoust. We have got great prawns. We have got calamari. We have got mussels. We have got a lot of things. People are not always adventurous. We have got many different types of fish from different types of water. We have got the great fish from the colder water. And we have got the fish also from the tropics, like a coral trout is a magnificent fish, the trompeter, the non whatever, the red emperors and all of that. So if you want, we have got it. Uh, People are still not always confident in preparing it, and there's something quite different with Australian kitchen than French kitchen. When in France you cook a beurre blanc sauce or you poach fish, people arrive and say, it smells good. You are cooking a beurre blanc. You are cooking fish." In Australia, the fan has got to be on. Open the door. There is that thing about smells in kitchen that was not as positive, I noticed, as it is in Europe or in an Italian restaurants where you arrive and you can smell the garlic or you can smell the seafood, the seafood soup cooking and things like that. But that being said, Australians have become very sophisticated because Australians love traveling. Australians have become much more adventurous cook, trying Asian food, trying European food, Middle Eastern food, to cure fish now, to eat raw salmon with a little dressing is now very common. So really, the new generation is very different.
Getting back to France and French food in relation to seafood, there's a seasonality to it, isn't there?
Well, for example, scallops, like it's more something that starts with, when you can fish them too. So it's. I remember when we were in France. Sometimes it was, the beginning or the end of the season in April. It depends on the region. It depends on how many fishes. The tuna, for example, when we were there in the southwest of France, in those great market, the Basque market, and I wanted to do a tuna to use with, to show some tuna to cook to use with the piment d'Espelette, and they say, oh, you'll have to wait a couple of weeks. So that was the end of May. So the tuna would arrive, at the end of May, and that would be the season. Um, and so there's season for lots of things, and in France, of course, because of the climate, like what's when it's winter, but the cooking is very different too. In winter, you make those big dishes like the with duck and beans and all those from practically your region. You are not very far from that country, and so the winter cooking is very different from summer cooking. In summer cooking, suddenly you have got the poached fish with mayonnaise. You have got in winter it's more like more heavy fish soups that you blend and with the leek and potatoes and the seasonal vegetables. So yeah, the cuisine is varies the availability of food, the crayfish season, to all of that to preserve. Like the salmon uh, was winter when the fish came in the river, and then after that the spring stopped because they were babies, and so it was a no-no, or the fish were pregnant. So you had to respect that in order to make things lasting for generations.
So, what is it about French food and the French that they can wait, I suppose, in anticipation, so to speak, of the salmon coming in winter or the asparagus coming when it's due?
In France, all those traditions started before transport was easy. So you had to cook the local food in season. So you didn't bring. In Australia, of course, it's a reasonably new country, and came with the industrial revolution and all of that, and also Australia is 14 times uh, bigger than France. So at the moment there's actually quite some decent strawberry coming from the Sunshine Coast. They're actually better than the strawberry we get in summer in Victoria, in my view, in flavor. In flavor, it is a bit unfortunate that they have got to come for that long. Um, but if you want, but there's food that are stupid to use, in like at the moment, I would not use peaches that come from, in Australia. I think it just doesn't work. Um, but there's things that work better than others. But I think we have so many, uh, especially where I live in Victoria. It's it's a garden state, and that's what it used to be called. So there's plenty of fresh food being grown uh, all the time. But at the same time, it's really lovely to be able to use the mangoes, when they are in season, because they're just such an extraordinary fruit. I like to use pawpaw, which is a fruit that is underestimated in Australia. Even French fresh pineapple. The other day, I bought a pineapple that was exquisite. That cost $4. I actually made four pots of jam out of it and mix it with some pawpaw. Nobody makes it, because when I arrived, the pineapple was exclusively, it was used from the can. Using a fresh pineapple at home was a very rare thing, and it is still rare, and it is still. Uh, uh, when I did my apprenticeship in 1971, we used to make a pineapple sorbet. That was just amazing, amazing. Not all the time, when it was coming from the French the French colonies, the islands, and they were plentiful. What an extraordinary fruit, very not used so much, and yet it is available, all the time. So, you know, it is better to eat food locally, and it's better to eat food that works with the weather. I think that you are healthier in winter if you have soups, vegetable soup. You are healthier in summer if you eat raw vegetables with radishes and cucumber and things like that. I think that that's really important for your body.
Moules and frites, which is mussels and
Oh,
French
yes, yeah.
fries. Some would say, arguably, it's a Belgium dish, but it seems to be as popular as McDonald's for, a quick bite to eat here in France. Why is it such a popular dish?
About 10 years ago, I think there was a company that did some research, some market research about the most popular French dish. And they did it in summer, and moule frite came as the number one in that particular time of the year. Because it's kind of, well, to start with, the French people cook mussels very well. In so many ways. Sometimes they are open. There's different types: the big one, the small one, the bouchot, and it's a food that you share. It's in the middle of the table, so it's really it's a wonderful food to share. It's like in the United States or other places where they put some shrimps in the middle of the table and everyone start peeling them, and so it is that kind of food. It pleases everybody, even kids in France love mussels, because it's part of our heritage. But certainly the Belgian people, with especially the fries, they really they love them, because potato in France, in terms of geography, the potatoes were easier to grow in a colder climate, like in the tropics, like in Queensland. It's easier to grow, but Queensland in Australia is okay. But in the islands, they grow sweet potato. They don't grow the potatoes that we grow in cooler climates. So the north, that was staple food.
Why does a bouillabaisse taste so different here in France than it does anywhere else in the world?
Well, certainly the bouillabaisse is a specialty of the Mediterranean. It was really a fisherman's dish. So the fisherman would catch lots of fish, lots of rockfish, and there was lots of them that was good looking, good portion, easy to sell at the market, and they always finished up with two or three of these not fish like that. Often very ugly fish, like when I say ugly, a snapper is a pretty fish, or a red snapper. It's a wonderful looking fish. Salmon is a good looking fish, but there's fishes that has all shapes, but they are delicious. They are very very strong in flavor. So the fisherman would sell all the good looking fish and make a soup with that, and it was really a very quick soup. Basically, some tomatoes, some oil. There's different soup. A soup that is cooked very quickly, like on the boil, um, and with 4 or 5 or 6 different fish. Sometimes there's shellfish, and those fish are extremely flavorsome in fish. Um, when you serve a bouillabaisse, so there's those some a bit of vegetable, some tomato certainly. Sometimes there is some anise flavor with fennel or other things, and then you put your fish. The fish traditionally put whole. They didn't cut it into small pieces, whole in it, and then the fish lifted out of that broth. Also in that broth there is some of that beautiful yellow spice. What is it called? Some
Saffron?
saffron, of course. That's really important. And then, so the broth is served uh, like that separately with some crouton, with some mayonnaise, garlic mayonnaise, and then the fish was filleted, and then people add a little bit of fish that they put in that broth. I have had quite a number of bouillabaisse myself, because we lived in Provence for a year and a half with our kids, and when it's well made, it's a powerful flavor. It's very powerful flavor. It's very tasty. There's lots of texture between the fish, the broth. it's a meal. It's a meal, and the crouton, of course, with the rouille. So it is one of the great. To me, it's one of the 10 great French classics.
What is it about French markets and the poissonnier at a French market that you can have fish just out in the air in the middle of summer? Is it freshness? Is it
Well, you could say that it's not ideal, but those people are professional, so they really get fresh fish. Like in the restaurant I worked in my apprenticeship, you gave a phone call at 11 o'clock at night to get some fresh fish from the sea the next morning dropped in front of you. So there is that idea of freshness that is very different, very different. Um, and also that ice is doing an important role, and that so they come and they of course they put as much as possible on display. Um, in Australia, those markets will not operate. There would be all kind of reasons why they would be closed. But in France, you can't do that. Those markets, like in Aix-en-Provence, the market that I was going was since the revolution, every day of the week. Um, so there's traditions, but certainly that they are trying to improve it. There's regulation and there's the norm now. There's the European norms that's very difficult for some artisans. But nowadays, for example, an example that is close, I think they have got to have refrigerated tracks. They probably keep a lot of fish, and then during the day they put some new one that was kept in ice. The farmers nowadays, years ago, you went to buy your milk, from they would measure it in front of you. Nowadays they come with a refrigerated little citern or barrel where you can buy your raw milk that is kept at 3 degrees or something like that, and nobody touches it. And when the milk, if you want, there's European norms, but for Australians uh, or Americans, it would look like if there's something wrong, but certainly when it's 40 degrees, it's not ideal, and those people in the market don't like it either. In the same way as they don't like it when it's minus 15, because in France, as you know, if it's minus 15, the market is still open and the people are outside and people go and do their markets. So it's not ideal for those days. They don't last forever. Uh, the mid-season in France are really wonderful. They're not too hot, they're not too cold. So those places keep going, but there will be an evolution of hygiene and things like that with the time.
You mentioned Paul Bocuse before. I've had the pleasure of dining at many of his restaurants in Lyon, in the city there, and then also the wonderful experience of actually dining at Bocuse in Lyon. And he wasn't there that day, but this was before he passed on. But his wife was there,
Yes.
and she came around. I think at the time she was in her late 80s. I'm not sure.
Yes.
She might have been in her 90s actually. But she would come around to each table and introduce herself and say hello. It really was an amazing food experience. And dish that I absolutely wanted to have, that was the sea bream
Oh,
that had
the puff
the
pastry.
pastry on top. Yes.
Yeah.
Have you had that dish yourself?
Yes, I've had it. I've taken groups. One day I took about 30 people to Paul Bocuse in Collonges-Mondor, and they brought in the dining room four of those gigantic fish cooked in puff pastry. So basically, it is a bar, sea bass, that is filleted. So you have got top fillets and bottom fillet. In between, they put a mousse, a crayfish and fish mousse. And the whole thing is surrounded with puff pastry made of the shape of the fish, complete with the scales and things like that. And it's cooked in an oven. Uh, and then they bring the whole fish to the table and they cut it into slices. And it is traditionally served with a sauce choron, which is béarnaise with tomato in it. And it is one of his great classic. He would have cooked thousands and thousands of this fish. And my friend Philippe Mouchel, a chef that lives in Melbourne, that
We I
he
love
has
Philippe. Yep, his
yeah
food is
worked with
amazing.
food is amazing. Worked with Paul Bocuse for many years. He told me that he's himself cooked thousands of them at the restaurant when he was working there.
Gabrielle, I feel like I could just talk to you for hours and hours and hours. I look forward to the day that you can come to France again. How long's it been since you've been here?
Almost 3 years.
Well, the next time you come over here, you'll have to pop into Montmorillon and have a visit.
May we?
We'll go explore and get some of the goat's cheese that this region is well known for, and the trout as well. Actually, there's a lot of wonderful trout around in this region. What's next for Gabriel Gaté?
Because of COVID, I've been working on a book of the different stages of my career and the recipes that were important for me or in those stages. So the recipes of my youth at home, the recipes of my apprenticeship, the recipes of as a young chef, my evolution as a chef, my best family recipes, my best recipes of the Tour de France, that kind of thing, and with a little bit of story. So that's what I'm working at the moment, and I'm always on the lookout for a job on television that would not be too demanding and that would take me to France. That would be the ideal.
That would be the ideal.
Like I did. That would be the ideal.
Right. Well, you'll have to come and visit a little old Aussie in Montmorillon when you come. Gabriel Gaté, you have given us such a wealth of knowledge, and I'm so glad to have talked with you and learnt more about your career, especially your early career, and all about French seafood. Thank you so much for joining us on Fabulously Delicious.
It was a great pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Gabriel.
Thank you, Andrew.
How fabulous is Gabriel Gaté? When I started Fabulously Delicious, I dreamed of the day that I'd be able to interview somebody like him, one of my food heroes, and look, here it is. And not only that, I got to interview him for a whole hour and a half, which made 2 episodes for you. It really showed what a generous and kind person he is to have taken the time to let me do that. And I hope you agree, it really was a fabulous podcast episode. What a wonderful wealth of knowledge he has about French food and seafood. And how lucky is Australia to have him living there, spreading the word of great food, seasonality and quality as well. Also, he's cooking up a storm with some delicious recipes from his cookbooks and on TV. So I can't wait to get my hands on that new cookbook. Remember, if you aren't already following me on Apple or Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts, then please do. Also, if you are on Apple, please leave me a review, pretty please. A 5-star one maybe even. Merci beaucoup. Over the next few weeks, we have some more fabulous French foodies on the way, so please do keep listening. And remember, as I always say, whatever you do, do it fabulously. A bientôt and bon app.